This is Joseph Coco. I'm at Space 2014 on behalf of Becca Hilburn's Art Process blog. Keep on trucking, Natto Soup. If you could introduce yourself, Matt.
Yeah, my name is Matt Dye. I'm a comic artist out of Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, and what's bringing you to Space this year? So you've been to Space for a few years now. Are there many indie comic conventions in Detroit, Michigan?
There's a handful, but Space is probably my favorite. I just like the crowd, and I feel like it's more catered to the type of stuff I'm doing.
Right. So it's more about the audience, or the shows you think that's bringing you to the Ohio area?
It's probably both.
Okay.
I think the audience here is really great, and the other artists are autobiographical. They're just kind of in the same mindset as well.
Yeah. All right. And can you tell me a little bit about your background in screen printing? I saw several things on your table are screen printed. The covers of some of your comics, like Nathan and Atlanta Robots, is screen printed. How did you start with screen printing?
I started with screen printing actually. The dude next to me, Ryan Clater, is another comics creator who's my professor at Michigan State.
Oh, that's great.
And he's pretty into screen printing as well. He kind of taught me the basics of it, and I hand screen printed my first comics in the basement of one of the dorm buildings.
Okay.
Supervision. So
the cover or the entire comic was screen printed. Okay. Yeah. I know there are some people who will take on the burden, I guess, to screen print the entire comic. I actually have a few screen printed comics myself. Yeah, they're very beautiful, but it's just so much labor. It's hard.
Yeah. Even working at a print shop, I've thought about it, but it still seems like too much.
Yeah, especially if it's text heavy, because sometimes it can be hard to line things up right. So we discussed earlier that you started in school screen printing naturally, but you're now working in an actual screen printing shop, a print shop.
Yep. So I work at a print shop that I interned at also when I was in school.
Okay.
Now I'm mainly in the art department there, doing like pre-prep and color separations and things like that. But I have the whole business at my disposal, so I like to use it as much as I can in my comics.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. So have you found that working in a screen printing shop, you've gotten many illustration jobs outside, like freelancing work outside of it, and people have been drawing your comics from your work at the shop, or is it are they more bifurcated, I guess, where you go to work and you're doing something you love, but then you come home and you're creating comics and just utilizing some of those skills as well?
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap. I've gotten a handful of illustration jobs through that.
Okay.
And just having that at my disposal allows me to do stuff for like bands, and then those bands will have my illustrations on their t-shirts, and fans see them, and it kind of just spreads from there.
Okay.
I've been able to build up a pretty decent portfolio of freelance work that way, so there's definitely some overlap there with like the work and then
Yeah.
like that.
So can you speak to a little bit, I know the indie comic scene has a lot of emphasis on originally printed covers and that sort of thing, because there's some desire that, well, this comic is limited edition, I can get it at this show, and like this is the printing for me. Like there's just a lot of allure to that, especially as mainstream is just like sweeping away any real artistic creativity, it seems like, in a lot of comics. Is that something you feel comfortable speaking about, just how the culture has built up around printing and how you guys are keeping it alive, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's cool to have something that feels a little more personal and maybe custom or different. It also helps just from a sales perspective to have something that's eye-catching.
Yeah.
And a little tactile, it feels high quality, you know.
The colors are very alluring. So can you tell me a little bit about Nathan and Atlanta Robots? What inspired the comic? It seems like it's geared a little bit more towards a younger audience.
Yeah, it's definitely an all-ages story. I wrote it, once again, under the supervision of Ryan Clater next to me when I was in school as an independent study project. And I kind of just wanted to explore that idea of youth and imagination and kind of the crazy places you can go. And, you know, obviously, I love drawing robots and imagining how they work, and making a whole world of them was really a good time for me.
Yeah, it's a very fun story.
Thank you.
One thing thing I was particularly interested in when I got to the back of the book, just looking at your table, I noticed that you have a great design sense. I imagine a lot of that comes from your schooling and also just from working in a print shop. But also I wanted to ask you a little bit about the scales that you have in the back of the book for some of the characters. Is that something that you felt the size of the characters was part of the story, I guess you could say, or you just did that for the reference of the kid's imagination?
Yeah, it was more to just give it that glossary kind of vibe.
Okay.
I feel like growing up, a lot of my favorite books were the ones that went into excessive detail in the back and had all the little blurbs, and as much as you can get.
Right, like high fantasy. There's an encyclopedia about this book.
Yeah, if you're really into something, it's fun to have more than just the story. You want to go online and figure more about it. So I thought it'd be cool to give people that, like a little, because all the robots in the story only have X amount of panels of screen time, if you will, to figure what they're all about. So if you read that, and then it gives you a chance to go back through the book again, and you're like, oh,
a different perspective on it almost.
I know a little bit more about them all.
Yeah, that's great. No, I thought that there might be a little more emphasis on the role the characters play depending on their size, essentially. But yeah, that's interesting. Like I've heard recently, for instance, Dark Souls puts a lot of emphasis on a creature's size. So there's been some dispute about, well, its size isn't necessarily accurate in terms of how tough it is, essentially, but it's more about storytelling. So there's a lot of myth and hype built up around this creature, so people perceive it as being like a very large or a very small creature.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay. I also wanted to ask you a little bit, I talked briefly about your signage and just your table setup in general. I think it's very eye-catching, but it's also straightforward. You get the information across quickly, and that's another testament to your design sense again. Can you tell me a little bit about what some of your inspirations were in terms of setting up your table? Were you mimicking your professor, or did you just naturally come up with something that looks
just how
great?
I put them out.
Okay.
I went to school for graphic design, so I guess design sensibility is something that I've gained over the years or paid for through education. I don't know, but I just kind of put things where I felt they were best suited. And in terms of the signs themselves, I didn't want to print something out or pay to get something printed and cut them out. I'd rather do it the handmade route.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of matches the work that I'm doing anyways. So
yeah, it's excellent branding and very eye-catching.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Messenger as well?
Yeah, that's a 24-hour comic I did.
Right.
With a group of friends in East Lansing at 21st Century Comics, which is unfortunately now out of business, but they were nice enough to lend us their space, and we stayed there and wrote comics all day.
There was a big 24-hour comics initiative in Detroit?
It was actually in East Lansing, but
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was kind of organized, just a group of students who all wanted to participate in and try it out.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it was a success for you, so it's good to see that.
Thanks.
Finally, would you have any advice for someone who's considering coming to space for the first time? An artist who's considering tabling for the first time?
Yeah, I would say that it's probably a good idea to split a table the first time. The first time I was here, I split a table 3 ways because if you're a beginning artist, so necessarily you're not a beginning artist if it's your first time here, but if you are and you don't have a lot to sell, it makes a big difference to only pay for a third of the table.
Yeah.
You can make back your money a lot quicker.
Yeah, sure. And where could we find your work online?
Yeah, it's mattdiedraws.com.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. I hope you have a good space.
Thank you. It's nice talking to you.